the gold. It could be too far. No, he's streaking. Oh, what a catch!
Puts a spicy forehand out in front of Naomi Morcilla.
Wu for the win. Team Canada. Darren Wu!
Santos with the layout grab.
Oh, that fantastic grab. The claws of Chapter.
Canada just became the world champions.
Yo, Canada and the rest of the world, you're listening to the Huckin podcast, your coast-to-coast guide for all things ultimate here in this great country. Once again, Danny is in Poland, so I'll be flying solo. You might be able to tell my voice is not what it normally sounds like, so a little scratchy. I'm not sure exactly where I lost it, but maybe commentating multiple events like, I just did Masters Nationals this past weekend and then walk before that. Maybe tax the voice there. So, I'm back in the great city of Toronto, just adjusting back to normal life here, doing things for work and whatnot. So, it's a good time back here in Toronto. Going to be going to some Jays games, so super excited about that. And, back to kind of life here after being away. Got to see some stadiums in the States, and that was really fun. So I just had a good overall time the last week, kind of just like taking time for the self, So anyways, we're going to jump right into news today. Going to talk TCU 20, going to talk Masters that happened over the weekend. And then we're going to have Andrew Portwine on, competition director. He's going to talk about seedings. He's going to talk about sort of what led into how the pools were made for CUC seniors. So make sure you stay tuned for that. But right now we're going to hit the news.
We now have breaking news.
We're going to hit the news right now. We're going to start off with U20. The Open team 6-0. So got to give some love for the Open team. They're starting out 6-0. Big victory over Italy 15-14. And they actually moved into the power pools. And as of this recording is 2-0 in the power pools as well. So they are doing well. It's been interesting to see the results, of course, and and what they've been able to accomplish. So let's take a look at the points leaders to start. Koji Suzuki's got 6 assists, 11 goals. Martin Gallant, 8 assists, 7 goals, and followed up by 2 Toronto players, Oscar Stonehouse with 14 points and Dax Miller with 13, and list continues to go down there. Neo DeBru and let's see here, Max Ayad as well in double digits. So those are who you're leading in production, but that doesn't always tell the story. So stats don't always tell the story there. So just remember that. And so they will play the U.S. in Power Pool. By the time this comes out, they will have already played that game. So not that this makes the segment irrelevant, but it sort of just puts them in like a situation of who they would play. So right now they are in Pool C. So if they were to lose that game, they would be the second in Pool C, and they would face the 3C team or 2D. So 3C right now, which we don't know, it would be Italy or France. So they might have a rematch with Italy, and then they would play the second team out of Pool D, which would be the loser of Colombia and New Zealand. So I think it would be Italy. So they would play Italy again in the semis, a rematch of their pool play matchup. And you know how hard it is to beat a team twice. So just remember that. If they do win, they would play the winner of 4C, which would be, in this scenario, I'm going to say France, versus the winner of Colombia and New Zealand. So that's sort of where the Open division is at right now. Moving over to women's, they're 4-2 right now. At the time of this recording, they dropped 2 games in pool play, 11-10 loss to the Czech Republic, and then a 12-9 loss to France. Multiple sources, not going to tell you who, of course. You can probably gather who, but not just one person, multiple sources saying, the game wasn't the most spirited and there were some calls. I know it can be difficult with potential language barriers, as well as we talked about this at WUC, in the WUC recap, how there are certain countries that play a different way of ultimate. So physical ultimate's more North American, I would say. I mean, not always, but that's part of it. So, some people are going to deem certain plays, I don't want to say dangerous, but sometimes unspirited, even though it's just normal physical play in another country. So that's always something cool and fun to navigate during Worlds, but also something to keep in mind as well. They have they're actually, ironically enough, currently playing this power pool matchup at the time of this recording. So they will enter into the sort of the bracket here. Their situation is, I believe they are going to swoop up the pool regardless of this game. Guess they would be tied. They're maybe a 3-way tie, but yeah, we won't speak to kind of what the result would be. But if they were to lose this power pool matchup to Austria, there would be like a 3-way tie. But we're just going to assume Canada wins. Let's just do that. So Canada would be 1D. So they would play 4C, which would be, right now it's looking like New Zealand. They're currently losing to the US 12-11 as I'm recording this. So it would be New Zealand. And then they would play 1C, which would be the US. So they're putting themselves in a potential semis matchup with the US if that happens. If they finish second in their power pool, which I don't know if that's possible, but if they were, then they would play some different teams. So they would play 3C, which would be the loser of France, Czech Republic, which is also ongoing right now. So all these things are very fluid. But basically, you could potentially have Canada play the US in the semis, which obviously you're hoping for the final. So still alive, of course, and battle tested a little bit. They went undefeated at No Borders, and now they're getting tested at the Worlds Tournament, which is good for them, I think. Arabella Brudney leading the team with 12 assists and 3 goals to combine for 15 points. The next best scorer is Alicia Zhang with 10 goals and 3 assists for 13 points. And then multiple players in double digits. Emily Marshall, Danae Jan, Emma Ernest, and Sophie Lyonnais, all in double-digit points. But once again, stats don't always tell the tale. So just remember that when we're talking about this. But yeah, we're going to see how Canada does in the rest of this tournament. We'll do a recap next week along with the CUC preview. So make sure you stay tuned for that. Talking Masters right now. For those who don't know, Masters was actually partially canceled due to weather. So some of the games were ended early. Let's just say that. So we'll talk about that, but we'll start with the division that didn't get canceled, which is Open. So Open actually had their pools, still went through their pool 4-0. Ensom came second, a big universe point victory over Quack, and then Grandsum, which is Ensom Grandmasters, defeating Viper. Viper, unfortunately, spoiler alert, not winning a game, oh so close on the second day, but still didn't prove my prediction to be true. But anyways, we're going to move on to the semis. Still took out Grandsum pretty easily, 15-3, and then Quack taking out Ensom 15-12. Had the pleasure of commentating this game, was super exciting. And yeah, I think going into it, a lot of people, including myself, thought Ensom was going to win, but Quack taking the dub. So we do like that. Then the final, Quack sort of running out of steam, as they say. They go down 15-6, still finishes with a gold medal. I think that was pretty easy to call from the start. I think Ensom gave them a game in pool play 14-9, but still just too much talent. I mean, they have 6 players in the leaders category for points. So anyone who has 12 points or above is from Still. So Colin Green, Peter Taylor, John Hallett, also MVP of that final. So congrats to you. Had a great game. Matt Berg, Sean Huynh, and Greg Ellis all leading the board. The next best people are from Quack and Ensom, Vincent Marquis, and then a few Ensom players, Nathan Osmond and Sebastian Nadon, their big handler, rounding out the 11 points there. So I think it went pretty straightforward in that division. Kind of still taking it. So we're going to move into women's here. Pool A going to what was seeded. So Stella wins the pool, going 45-10 in terms of goal differential. So throwing 45 or scoring 45 and giving up only 10. Higuata coming in second, Quasar third, and then I got a chance to see them in person. The women's Masters team out of North Bay. Shout out for even showing up to the tournament, and good things coming for you on Sunday as well. So do like to see that. But yeah, we're going to go to Pool B here. Macrame takes it 3-0. Solstice 2-1. Lore finishes defeating Queen Peas. Queen Peas not letting my prediction come true. Maybe I'm not sure what happened there. Maybe I tried to do my research. I don't know what happened. All I know is Queen Peas came in fourth. Lore gets a big W over them 8-7, and then Solstice got to play on the live stream, and they looked pretty strong, especially because they are a Grand Masters women's team. So give a shout out first of all to that. You're playing like down a bracket. So it should be Grand Masters. Almost everyone on that team was Grand Masters. I heard they have a couple 50 plus players as well. So congrats to you. Let's go into the playoffs. There are quarters and semis not affected by rain. So kind of who you expect for the quarters. Aguada, Macrame, Solstice, and Stello. And then the semis not particularly close. So Macrame and Stello make it to the final. And then Stello, by virtue of leading before the weather delay, there were actually 2 weather delays. So there was one. We sit there in our cars. I get a bunch of editing done. It's great. We go back out. It's sunny. Okay, this is great. It was 1-1 at the first delay. Stello takes the lead 4-2. Then there's another delay. I first question why the delay is happening because I don't see what, other people are seeing or the radar. But then like a few minutes after we get in the cars, it's like pouring rain. There's like, I think there was thunder. I know there was pouring rain. Like it was torrential. So that was pretty bad. And then eventually it gets canceled. So, hey, don't play from behind. You got to be leading. So we saw that there from Stello. They win the final 4-2, which is kind of interesting. Aguada wins bronze 2-1. I don't even know how you determine that, but on the sheet it says Aguada defeated Solstice there. Psycho Cybernetics, big W over Lore 6-5. So they actually end up 6th. So Quasar 5th, Psycho Cybernetics 6th, and then Queen Peas and Lore 7 and 8 to round it out there. So in terms of who's leading the stat sheet, let's take a look. Top point getter is Julie. No, it's not Julie Vachon. It is Kim Lee Bui out of Quasar, 5 assists, 9 goals, and then followed by Macrame's Catherine Poirier and Julie Vachon out of Stello with 12 apiece. And then, there's a few more Stello and Aguada. Well, there's an Aguada player in there, Stephanie Graton, with 11 points along with Ashlyn Kelly. So that's your top little, 5, we'll say, in points there for the women's division. Now moving on to mixed. This was the most interesting one, I think, because it was pretty open. Different teams had some chances at winning. So I think this was probably the most exciting division to keep an eye on. Pool A goes to seed. Poc takes the pool. Rogue Hippo comes second, pushing Bordaisy's third. Moving on to Pool B, Cold takes it. It also goes to seed. Flow lose a heartbreaking game out of Toronto. They lose 14-13, and then Cold takes down 15-6 Trail Mix in the live stream, which yours truly was on. But here's where the upset happened. Tourist KWG seated higher. They drop a game to Dinner at 4, 13-11. So that moves Dinner at 4 automatically into the quarters. Notorious KWG has to play in that play-in game there. And then in Pool D, Forever Young takes it. They defeat Elder 13-9 to take first in the pool, pushing Daisies coming in third in that one. So now we have crossovers to kind of get in. Win this. And there were some like crossovers with the top teams, but then there were also ones to get in. So all the top seeded teams won their crossover. So Trail Mix, KWG, Elder, and Rogue Hippo all won their crossovers leading to the quarters. So in quarters, Poc defeats Trail Mix. Not a close game, unfortunately, 15-2. Cold also wins 15-6 over KWG. And then this is the tight game there. Elder and Dinner at 4. Tight matchup, 10-9 the final score line. Forever Young also moving into the semis. And in the semis, believe that the semis this was the time slot where it was also rained out, so you'll see some interesting scores. But Poc was leading Cold 11-10. Forever Young was leading Elder 11-3, so they're automatically into the final. And so I guess they both tie for gold. But Forever Young, I feel bad because they come from Vancouver to play. They want good competition. Might not get it where they're from. And then, hey, like, they go and win. Or they go and win all their games. They get to the final and then rain. So tough for them. Cold and Elder would have been playing for third in that pool. And then Flow takes 9th. So Firefly, Pushing More Daisies, and Pushing Daisies all go 1 and 2. Mind you, the one game Pushing Daisies and Firefly was 2-1. So really it's like kind of a victory, I guess. But, 2-1, it's hard. It was the same in women's. 2-1 scoreline, hard to swallow that's like your how you determine the result. But rain is what it is, so we can't do anything about it. Vincent Fortin out of cold with 15 points, along with Nigel Batchelor from Firefly, Daniel Bauer, Craig McFarlane from Forever Young and Firefly, respectively, with 14 points. And then Brian Smith, Trail Mix, Donald Kwok, Kyle Minyeke, and Kwok out of Flow. And then Valerie Shannon, Minyeke, Kwok, and Smith, all 13 points. And then Valerie Shannon repping for Pushing Daisies with 12, along with Andrew Durgo out of Rogue Hippo and Patrick McQuarrie and Stuart McDonald Elder. So those lots of 12-pointers there in the mixed. We're going to go quickly through Spirit scores. I know, I saw one of the YouTube comments talking about Spirit, and yeah, we're not going to get too much into it, but we'll talk Spirit scores quickly. Very high Spirit scores from the mixed. Quite high, actually. One team going 14.6. So I don't want to say it's like because of inflation, but those are pretty high Spirit scores. Pushing Daisies, congratulations winning Spirit in that division. In Open, it's Grandson with a score of 12.33. And then in Masters Women's, it is Agawada, 12.6. And just a note, every single team scored above 10 in Spirit. So take that for what you will. Inflation, people just not wanting to give low scores, I don't know. But that's sort of what happened there in Masters. And we got CUC Senior coming up and Junior. So stay tuned for that. More coverage from the podcast there. So yeah, thanks for all the Masters players going on and playing. Saw a bunch of kids around. That was super fun to see because it's just cool to see how these parents are still involved, enjoying the game. So do appreciate that. We're going to talk CUC Senior picks now. But this new segment, I'm going to announce the picks contest. We did this last year as well for UCI. Our friend Daniel I, Ngay as he's known, a photographer, Nagai or Nai, however you want to say it, because I'm probably got it wrong still. He's going to chirp me for that. But he won last year on a tiebreaker to get a free 1-year subscription to Ultiworld's video library and also like all the articles and stuff. So if you want to enter the contest, please do so. It's going to come out on Friday. You can check it out on our Instagram or Facebook, and it will link to a Google form. Fill out the Google form, free to enter. If you win, you get a free 1-year Ultiworld subscription. Nothing better than that. You get to watch all the videos, subscriber-only bonuses. Why not? And all you have to do is prove your Canadian Ultimate knowledge. So do that. Picks contest. We're going to do that. And uni season's around the corner as well. We see lots of uni teams posting stuff. McMaster did something. Guelph. I see Trent out there. Algonquin. Toronto Metropolitan University. Lots of teams. I can't name them all. So we're going to do the power rankings again. So stay tuned for that as well. University captains. You'll be getting messages from me. Maybe Danny, but you'll be getting messages from me or from the podcast, I'll say. And you'll be able to chime in with what you think is who's going to win. Who are the power teams to watch over? There's a lot of people that got club experience this summer. So I think the university landscape is going to change a little bit, which is exciting. So we're going to head to the main event with Andrew Portwine, take a quick break, and then we're going to talk CUC seedings and pools and all the decisions and rules specifically that led to that.
This episode has been brought to you by VC Ultimate. VC Ultimate has been producing custom uniforms and performance apparel right here in Canada since 1998. VC's sublimated gear is made from 100% recycled FlexLight fabric, and design services and product samples are both free. Get your VC jersey today.
This is Thompson McKnight from Goat Ultimate, and you're listening to the Huckin A podcast, your coast-to-coast guide for all things Canadian Ultimate.
All right, it's main event time. We got the Andrew Portwine here in the house, representing Ultimate Canada. Really excited to have a conversation with him about CUC. We're specifically talking about the senior division today and how the seedings work. The pools are out, schedule's out, so you can check all that online. And on the Huckin AA page. We're going to be posting graphics as well, so you can check it out. But we got Portwine here. Portwine's been on the show before, but, that was a long time ago. So, Portwine, I'm going to let you intro yourself once again, talk about your tournament directing experience. You're the comp director for this tournament, CUC Seniors. So, tell us about yourself.
For sure. Thanks, Theo. So, Andrew Portwine. I'm currently the president of the board of directors for Ultimate Canada. Somehow got reelected this past AGM, so I should say thank you to the folks that cast some votes for me. I've been around the game since 97, so quite a while now. And as you mentioned, Theo, I'm competition director for CUC Seniors coming up in Brampton. Mr. Batchelor finally needed a rest, I think, so I got some duties off of him. And so I ran 2011 University Nationals here in Waterloo, 2014 CUC in Waterloo, and 2018 World Juniors in Waterloo. So, I've sort of run the gamut on being around and running tournaments and what have you, and of course, playing and doing some other things. Commentary, that was a good one too. As you know, Theo, it's a pretty fun gig, so been doing a lot over the years.
Yeah, Portwine's a who's who of tournament directing, university CUCs as well. And then obviously the big World Juniors event that many, I think, had a chance to attend, the U20s. That was really cool. U20s going on currently as we speak in Poland. So, all right, we're going to jump right in. Let's start with the women's division. For those who don't know, like I said, the pools are out. Iris and Stella, your first two seeds. I'm going to let Portwine kind of just go through the decisions behind, and not just decisions, I should say, the rules behind the decisions is actually what we're here to talk about, because it's not some arbitrary thing, even though it might feel like that. So 4 Ontario teams, 4 Quebec teams, Alberta team, and BC team make up the women's division. Portwine, I'll let you go.
For sure. So this is my first time going through it. So like you say, it's there's a lot of rules. So I was digging deep into the competition manual because it's pretty prescribed how we do this stuff. There's a little bit left to the competition director. So women's is a good place to start. It's a bit smaller pool. So what we do is once we get all of the provincial results or the regional results for qualifying, the manual states that seed 1 and 2 for CUC are placed by the tournament director. So, or competition director, excuse me. So in this case, Iris and Stella were my first two placements in the bracket. So Iris number 1, Stella number 2. And then it states in the manual that in the first pot to be drawn is 3 and 4. So in this case, I put Cube and Incognito into the pot, and Cube was drawn first for 3 seed, Incognito for 4 seed. The next pot has 4 teams put into it, so that's going to be 5, 6, 7, 8, and they're drawn out again. So in this case, into that pot was PPF, Venus, Remix, and Drift. So they were drawn out in the order of Drift, Remix, Venus, and PPF, which is reflected in our seedings. And then the final 2 teams, I actually placed them because there was an Ontario team. So I placed Luna into the last seed only to achieve the balance of not too many Ontario teams in one pool. So there was a bit of placement and I'll say manipulation at the bottom of that one. But as you know, Theo, there's nothing worse than traveling across Canada to go to a nationals and then you end up playing, 3 other, say, Ontario teams that you could play any given time. So we do our best to try and balance the regional representation in the pools.
Yeah, and I'm just looking at the sheet now, which obviously in the audience you can't see, but if Luna had moved into the pool A with PPF and Incognito, that'd be 3 Ontario teams, but also on the other side, Volt would be in a pool with 3 Quebec teams. So it just kind of made sense to switch it over there. Portwine, I warned you about this question. I think many in the audience are going to have this question as well. We posted the regionals results on our Instagram page, and we appreciate the engagement, first of all. I know Incognito was definitely a squad that was sharing a lot of those, the graphic, which is great. Incognito, for those who don't know, won the 1 day kind of like round robin, right? So they were in a round robin with PPF, and Luna. Stella was not there due to circumstances related to COVID. So some people are going to say, Portwine, hey, this question was coming. Hey, Stella didn't play this. I know they had COVID, but they didn't play. why is it that they get to be seeded higher than a team that had to like leave from Toronto to go play Ottawa for a one-dayer and won all their games that they had in front of them? They couldn't play Stella. They haven't played them this year, from my knowledge. So, yeah, explain that, because I know that's going to be a question that many folks have in the audience, I think.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's definitely a relevant question and a good question. So typically when you go through the manual, if a team can't play, so first I'll say Stella couldn't play because COVID sort of hit their roster, and out of safety, they actually requested to pull out, which is great on their part for sort of self-reporting. I quite enjoyed that. We need more teams to be responsible. So we did have the round robin. Incognito did do well and represented themselves well and won that day. So with Stella, if you go through the manual and some of the processes, if all of the teams that did play can agree on a seeding, then we can place Stella where the other three teams agreed. Stella included too. That did not happen. Not all of the teams could agree, which, probably to be expected. The backup to that is that the competition director then puts Stella into the appropriate seating that they believe. So I did take feedback from all of the teams as well via email to see what their thoughts were for consideration. Typically, I would look at some common results over previous years, but as you know, with COVID and UCI was not a formal national championship, so those results are invalid. Incognito weren't necessarily there in that form, but point being, there are no immediately valid results with the rosters as constructed. So Stella being a Worlds team this year and traditionally the A team out of Ottawa, I slotted them in as Ontario's top result based on that for this particular year.
And here's a thought that I had. I think you could save and obviously the schedule can't change now, but you could save the controversy by just putting Incognito in the same pool as Stella, no? Like that could have just saved you some controversy there, no?
It may have, but that would mean I would have to place Stella ahead of Iris into Pool A, which I don't think is justified. And because Incognito and Cube were put into a pot to be drawn, the luck of the draw got Cube to be drawn for third seed and in the pool with Stella. So that was a little bit out of my control on the draw, and I didn't feel comfortable putting Stella ahead of Iris for the overall number one seed.
And yeah, no, it makes sense. I think you're in a tough position regardless. I'm not here to grill you like a big sports caster here, but it's tough because do you put Stella then as the second out of Ontario? But then what about PPF? And then Luna played this tournament, so should Stella be seeded fourth in out of Ontario? That's not really fair because they're not a 4 seed. So you're kind of put in a tough position. So I think regardless of what you were going to do, people are going to have some pushback, and like I just did right now, but you do what you can, right? So that's sort of kind of what you can conclude from that, right?
For sure. And I mean, no matter what the decision is, you're never going to please the entire group of people all the time, right? So, as long as I'm able to give my justifications, I hope people sort of see the position that I came from and how the decision was made at this particular point in time.
Yeah, we're going to move over though now into open. We'll move teams. We'll go from 10 now to 16. So in open, there are 2 teams from Alberta, 2 from British Columbia, 1 team from Manitoba, 1 team from the Maritimes, 1 team from Newfoundland, and then 4 out of Ontario and 5 out of Quebec, with a caveat that some people probably know now, but Mephisto originally supposed to be playing this tournament, not playing this tournament now. So Magma, congratulations, you're in. You're probably going to be the last seed, which we do see, but hey, you're in. That happened to me in 2014 when Portwine was actually coaching my team. We had got in as the last seed when another team dropped out. So do appreciate that. But let's go into open. This one obviously is going to be a bit trickier than women's, just more teams. And you kind of, have some interesting seedings with the Quebec team being seeded first. So talk about kind of how you seeded the open division.
For sure. First, I'll say you're not supposed to say that your hard work was qualifying to nationals by someone else dropping out. you led your team to nationals, Theo. You didn't wait for someone else to drop out to get into nationals.
Sure, we'll go with that.
You don't give yourself enough credit for your on-field play while you're on this podcast.
I discount myself because I want to boost myself as a podcaster, so that's why.
So on to Open. So again, same rules apply. The first 2 seeds are placed by the competition director. So we have Quake and Phoenix. I have to catch myself on that one a few times as I use the old name.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you can't use. I did this. I will admit, I was recording a Universe Point video at No Borders on our Instagram, and I actually say Shrike wins. Or like one of the games I said Shrike, and I realized it's not Shrike, it's Phoenix, and they got better branding now, so got to give love to the Phoenix, the B.
Well, and if that was No Borders, I believe they had a different name for No Borders as well. So, yes, these teams are rotating names. So, Quake and Phoenix, I chose Quake as number 1 because I felt at the time that the Quebec regionals had a bit stronger group of teams that Quake had sort of worked their way through. And Phoenix number 2, I think, are a fairly clear number 2, at least in my opinion. So, there's my 1 and 2. 3 and 4 again go into a pot. So I had General Strike and Blackfish into that, pot for seed 3 and 4, and General Strike was drawn first out of that pot. So they are 3 seed, Blackfish 4 seed. The next 4 teams go into a pot. So we try and do these in groups of 4 after the first 2. So the next 4 would be Ascension, Boat, Manic, and AFC in the pot, and they were actually drawn in that order. So, they were not. Manic was drawn for 5th seed, Boat, Ascension, and AFC. So those 4 were in there. Apologize on my order there. So Manic drawn, Boat, Ascension, and AFC drawn in that order. The next 4 going into a pot, and this is where it starts to get a little tricky. As you said at the start, we have pretty heavy amount of Ontario and Quebec teams. And as we spoke about with the women's bracket, where we want to try and spread out the Ontario and Quebec teams primarily just because of how many there are, as we draw out of this pot, we start to see some teams being shifted to ensure geographic diversity in the pools. So the next pot ended up having Madhouse, Whiskey Jacks, GT, and Regiment in that pot. Madhouse was drawn first. Whiskey Jacks was drawn next, but were shifted to a different pool because they were in the same pool as AFC with that draw. So you'd have both Alberta teams in the same pool. GT was drawn next. They were also shifted to avoid some Ontario, logging of teams. And then Regiment was drawn. So there was a little bit of shifting already, even in that pot, just to even out the geographic teams. And then our final pot of 4 was Hound, Magma, Oni, and Out. Magma was drawn first out of the pot. They were shifted again, get away from some other Quebec teams. Hound was drawn next. They were shifted again to avoid some Ontario teams. Oni, and then Out. And then one other rule that comes into play, as you've seen, we also have some geographic shifting, but one other rule is that the results at the regional level or at the qualifying level have to be respected in the national pools. So on the original draw, Magma was actually placed ahead of Out in terms of overall seedings for Quebec in the national pools. But because Out finished ahead of Magma in the Quebec qualifier, those 2 teams flipped their spot so that was respected in the national seedings as well.
And I think the same happened. Was there another situation where that happened as well? I think it was Ascension and Manic. Is that right?
Yes, Ascension and Manic also shifted at the end as well so that we could respect the regional results out of Quebec. So we don't want a team to actually move up in seedings compared to their regional, compatriots.
No, that makes sense. So, I got some questions for this as well. I'm just looking back here at 2021, obviously UCI, a different name tournament, but some questions I think people have had is Blackfish finished, from what I see here, 13th at UCI. AFC finished 5th and General Strike finished 8th. So AFC, in my predictions, I'm gonna give a teaser to the fans here, but I think AFC is very underseeded and underlooked here. So keep an eye out for that pick. But AFC's drops all the way to 8 based on like how the potted system worked. So they could have been 5, but they get 8, sure. But what was the rationale between General Strike and Blackfish being in that second pot there?
Yeah, good questions. So General Strike, again, UCI is not the same tournament as CUC, so those results were not looked at because different rosters, different areas, different reasons for playing the game. We have no valid results going back through the COVID seasons, COVID times. So some of this is, I'm going to say, General Strike was a little bit of legacy and previous results at CUCs in the past. They've been a strong team. And I'm not going to lie that the Blackfish AFC debate in my head as I was doing the seedings did play out. I chose Blackfish to go into that first pot in the 3-4 seeds because they played through a regional qualifying with 4 teams in their qualifier out in BC. So they sort of, I'll say, earned it. And I don't want to slight AFC at all, but there was only one other Alberta team who conceded top seed to AFC. So there was no actual play for that position. So I wanted to reward Blackfish for going through a bit more of a gauntlet to earn that top pot. And then, as you stated, AFC, yes, probably slightly underseeded, but this is some of how the pot system works, right? They could have been 5th. They could have been 8th, somewhere in that neighborhood. So, as much as I debated them for that 4th seed, they did drop by luck of the pot.
Yeah, and I'm saying that to warn people for the picks contest. So that's why if you're doing the picks contest, you're listening to this episode, but you should tell a friend who's going to do the picks contest because then you learn which teams are actually in the same pot, so you can kind of get a general idea, so you don't just pick off seed, But speaking of seeds, we got 2 really underseeded teams, in my opinion, in Hound, which is 15, and Out, which is 14. But that's just a result of their placing at regionals, right? You can't go off of their rosters or who they have because you have to go off the regional results. So that's pretty cut and dry there. Like you had no choice but to put them in the 4th pot.
Yeah, I mean, being from Ontario and just knowing the roster, I can relate to Hound probably feeling underseeded. I know they have a roster that is better than how they actually performed at regionals, but regionals is what it is, and the results that they earned, I have to respect those and put them sort of into the pot with their equal leveled teams. I agree they may be underseeded. If I was doing a picks contest, I may think they're going to up their...
I don't think you can, though. You cannot, as a competition director, do a picks contest.
Exactly. I'm not going to do that, but I can see where people are coming from. But again, they did not perform probably to their standard at regionals, and I have to take that into consideration when I am putting them into the appropriate pot for the draw. And then again, without, it was sort of luck of the draw. They were drawn actually last and only moved up a little in the seeding because of the flip with Manic to respect the provincial results. But that, again, was just bad luck that they were essentially drawn last seed. So, that's some of the pot system. You can really drop by 4 seeds depending on, luck of the draw.
And for those who might be thinking about the pot system and why that happens, well, I mean, it's not like USAU results where there's a lot of interconnectivity with teams. Like teams from BC don't play Ontario teams in the regular season. So the only real connectivity based on location is usually Ontario and Quebec. And then Madhouse is in there because they'll play no borders. So there's a little bit of interconnectivity with the results there. But other than that, it's sort of like you go off last year rosters and things. So definitely a tough job there. Portwine, hopefully you're getting paid a lot of big bucks for it. But yeah, tough job.
I will say this is also an odd year because we are coming out of COVID with no valid results. I mean, typically you'd go back to the previous year and look at qualifying in CUC and no borders or some other common tournaments in the region of question. But it's a little bit blind at this particular time just because of lack of games, essentially.
Yeah, it makes sense. So we'll finish off here in terms of, I got some more questions for you after this, but in terms of our seedings. We got mixed here, 20 teams, as you people probably know. The division expanded a few years ago now to 20. So we have one team from Alberta, 3 teams from British Columbia, a team from Manitoba, a team from New Brunswick. Represent, let's go. And then 7, and then we got a lot here, which is going to make it tricky, and you're going to explain all this. 7 teams from the same province of Ontario, and then 7 as well from the same province of Quebec. So obviously, as we go through this, you're going to see that teams are going to have to shift, folks, because you don't want like 4 Ontario teams in one pool, or 3. So, or maybe there's 3, but you don't want 4. So we'll let Portwine talk about it.
Well, and you hit the nail on the head. Honestly, with so many teams out of Ontario and Quebec, there's going to be so much shifting in these pools, and especially as you get down to pot, 3 and 4. But we'll run through. Again, 1 and 2 are placed by the competition director. So Union as 1 seed, PBHG out of Manitoba as the 2 seed. Both were Worlds teams, and truthfully, with lack of games, I looked at their Worlds results and put Union ahead just based on a fairly strong showing in Ohio not too long ago. So, but both teams very strong. 1-2 seeds clearly. 3 and 4 went into a pot. Red Fox and TT. Red Fox was drawn for 3 seed. TT out of BC for 4 seed. 5 through 8 we had Harfang, Loyal. I believe that's how you say that.
Yeah.
Local 613 and Crash went into that pot and were drawn out. Harfang, Loyal, Local 613 and Crash in that order. And again, from here on, as we start drawing, you start to maybe see some shifting and different things as pots are starting, or as pools are starting to fill here.
And Portwine, before you even continue here, I just want to ask about this pot in general. It looks like you just took the next 2 teams in Ontario, correct? And kind of put them like based on regional results. Is that right? Like the 2 and 3 seed out of Ontario, and then looks like the 2 and 3 seed out of Quebec as well. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. So it went 2-3. Because of the size of regionals and going through such a strong round of play to qualify, 2 and 3 out of Quebec and Ontario, I felt were deserving of these, of this pot to be drawn this high into the seeds. Not to take away from some of our other regions in the country, but with only 1 team and a bit of a, guaranteed bid, I tried to reward teams that actually played meaningful qualifying games.
Yeah. So basically you're saying teams, you need to move to Ontario and Quebec. That's pretty much what you have to do. I'm just kidding.
I'm not saying that, but it's tough to, with no, again, common games and no results from, say, the East Coast or somewhere, that doesn't have enough capacity of teams to have that regional qualifier. It's tough, right? Not to mention, if I start putting in East or West or other teams in here, all the Quebec and Ontario teams get pushed down to the final pots, and we just can't have that. Otherwise, they're all going to be in the same areas of the pools, right? So it is also to help mix up the teams a bit. So on to the next pot. We had Crank, Fable, Lit, and Spawn. So here we start to see our coast-to-coast diversity coming in. And they were drawn. So we have, actually, they were drawn as Crank, Fable, Lit, Spawn. You'll see there's a flip at the end. We'll get to it later on because I'm sure people are looking at the results. But so those were placed. No one really flipped right now because of any regional diversity. The next 2 pots, we have lots of shifting, obviously. The next pot was Crux, Flames. My French is not good. I'm going to get...
Hey, you and me both. We try, though. We try.
Quest and Force. Crux was drawn first and shifted. Flames was okay. They were drawn next. Quest was drawn and shifted. And Force was drawn and placed. And again, some shifting just because it's Quebec and Ontario teams. We are trying to keep it even number, Ontario and Quebec through the pools. So...
Yeah, because otherwise Crux, like I'm looking now, Crux would have been in Pool A as the 13 seed. They would have had 3 Ontario teams there, correct? So that's...
Yeah, 3 out of 4 teams in that pool would have been Ontario without even drawing the last pot yet. So
And same thing
really,
with Quest in Pool C, it looks like. So just trying to help people really understand where the seeds come from. That's why we're kind of like breaking it down like pretty basic, just so that people understand this is why. Like, for example, Quest would have been 15, but they would have been in pool with Red Fox and Harfang. So got to shift them a little bit.
Essentially just recreating Quebec regionals all over again at a national tournament. So again, shift these teams. And then the final pot had Kombucha Culture, Danger Noodle, great name, Mola Mola, and Red Fox 2. Kombucha Culture was drawn. Danger Noodle was shifted to avoid some Ontario teams. Mola Mola was shifted to avoid another BC team. Red Fox 2 was placed in. So, again, a little bit of shifting to avoid recreating Ontario and Quebec regionals. I will say there's a note afterwards. Once I did look at the pools, I flipped the 10 and 11 seeds, which were Lit and Fable. And that was so that I did not have two BC teams in the same pool. So Mola Mola was drawn at the 20 seed, would have been in the same pool as Fable at the 10 seed. So flipping those at least got some regional diversity, so the BC teams aren't, playing each other again in pool play. And then going back to something we spoke about earlier, Red Fox 2 and Kombucha Culture, which are the 17 and 18 seeds, were flipped because of respecting the results at the Quebec Regional to make sure that the higher seeded team remains the higher seeded team at the national level.
Yeah, I mean, there's your 20 teams right there. Kind of straightforward when it comes to where they ended up because of the regional shifting. I think if people were to have like a qualm, it might be the team that got put in a certain pot. But once again, you went off of results. So like, for example, Craig is in a pot higher than Crux and Force because they did better. So in Ontario. So that's just how it goes. Any other thoughts you have about mixed before I ask you some general questions about about this whole process and things like that?
Just the biggest thing with mixed is the Quebec and Ontario popularity really made the last two pots and placements, it's quite difficult just so we have a more fair tournament and more uniform, representation in each pool. That it's a big division with 20 teams and 14, I believe, were from Quebec and Ontario total. So it makes it pretty rigid in how you can place teams if you don't want to have all Ontario in a pool. So, but yeah.
And I mean, where it is in Ontario kind of makes sense. Generally, those are the two provinces with more teams anyways, but in a non-quote unquote World's Year, and those things, that's what happens. But let's talk about the pot system in general. Is this something that I know I've seen it in university as well? This is going to be something that continues, correct? Like moving forward?
For sure. In the short term, I mean, I think it's fairly successful. It sounds like it's pretty well received. It's something our competition committee can look at or will look at. I'm sure after a few years, we'd like to give it a fair run, obviously. But so far, it seems to be well received. Again, we've sort of had some COVID times in the middle, but it adds a little element of randomness, and I'll say almost an element of more fairness to the draw as well. So you're not relying totally on the competition director to set every seed through the entire, 16 or 20 team pool. And especially as a competition director, depending where you live, you're going to know the teams in your area. You're not going to know the teams across the country, and you have just results to look off of. So, could be biased towards, say, in my case, biased toward an Ontario team over a BC team just because I know them and I believe they're good players. If you get them in a pot and they're drawn, they can go up and down 4 seeds and actually have a little more flexibility, right? So I think it's a little more fair, and it takes it out of the competition director's perceived bias.
So that's what we like to hear. I also do like, I believe Windmill does this, but obviously you can't do this at a national tournament, but I love the Swiss draw concept where you like play a team in the beginning, and then if you win, you move to a certain area, and if you lose, like, I don't think that could happen at nationals, but I always love like different tournament formats. I don't think you always need the traditional there. But you kind of addressed this earlier, but is there a certain division that was harder to seed than others? Like, was there one that kind of took you way more time to kind of go through than the 2 other ones?
Well, I mean, mixed for sure. Just again, given the heavy Ontario and Quebec basis, and especially those last two pots, there was a bunch of shifting, and even after the seeds were set, flipping a couple of teams just to ensure that we had some diversity and respect the regional results. But even open, again, as you alluded to earlier, the some teams may have underperformed at their regionals, and what pot they should be in and what pot they deserve to be in are two different things. So I found that difficult, but with the regional results, you have to kind of get them into the pot with their peers across the country. So it ended up, I think, working out all right. I mean, a few teams may have a beef with my pot that they ended up getting put into, but if they just play to their potential, I think they'll be happy with their results at CUC.
Well, to be honest, I don't think it's the teams that are underseeded that are necessarily if I was a 2 or 3 seed in a pool and I got, a certain team drawn as the 4 seed, I would be mad because I would just be like, really? Like, we get this team in our pool as the 4 seed? So it kind of, it is what it is, folks. You got to play the game. So no one's going to get a free pass to the final. Let's just say that. You're going to have to play some good teams, either in pools or power pools to get there. So regardless, you're going to play good teams. So we'll leave it at that. But can you talk about preparations for the tournament itself? So kind of maybe ground level. I'm sure people have been out to the facility because, it's less than about a week away from when this comes out. So what's the preparations been on your end and sort of from the whole Ultimate Canada team there?
Yeah, for sure. I'll say from my end, it's been getting the schedule finalized. We've had a few field changes, but the schedule, I think as of yesterday, before this recording, it was finalized and ready to go. It's probably posted online today and visible to everyone. Proper field allotments and everything. So schedule's out. Captain's email should be going out probably before this hits the airwaves. People will have that. I will say Troy, our events manager, has been very diligent getting everything done on the ground. Danny Saunders as well. So it sounds like everything is up and ready to go. And maybe some good news is I think we secured a party venue for the CUC seniors. Originally, we were not planning a party. So
was there some backlash to that?
A little bit. I wouldn't say a lot, but we found a venue that was willing to host us, and we were able to secure that. So it sounds like a party is on the horizon for this event, which is, I'll say, nice to see. We're getting back to a little bit more normal tournament structure nowadays and what have you. So it sounds like everything's coming together, and we should be good to go for next week in Brampton.
Well, the question I have from this is obviously are commentators allowed to go to this party is the main question I have. And that's first off, I'll ask you that.
I guess I could let you go if you wanted to.
All right, I'll be there. Come say hi. But
or who's your boss?
You mentioned the getting back to normal, but COVID's still a reality, as many people that play Worlds know. COVID was hitting different teams at Worlds, Canadian teams specifically as well. I mean, I'm not going to name them all, but definitely different people got hit by COVID. Let's just say that. So if what would cause a team to not be able to compete at CUC? Like, let's say someone contracts COVID on Thursday or Friday. Is there like a minimum roster thing? I know this is a touchy subject, but is there a minimum roster or something that they have to abide by to be able to play or forfeit, or what would that look like?
For sure. We certainly have some health protocols in place. The fine details I'd have to go and read, but what I will say is we do have return to play protocols that were sent out for CUC Masters to the teams. They'll be sent out to the CUC seniors. These were developed by our medical working committee in relation with some of our other committee members and, ratified by the board. So we're all quite confident in these return to play measures as they were basically set up by doctors on our medical working committee. Again, for the fine details, I'd have to sort of read them a bit more, but teams are well aware of them. They've been sent out to team captains that are attending so they can make arrangements as needed. And again, we have other things like you just said at Worlds and what have you, like there's no field food for safety reasons. Obviously, we'll have food trucks. There will be food available in Brampton, but no sort of open field food as we normally do with players grazing in and out. And, it is a different world for tournaments now with COVID, but certainly precautions are in place and have been developed by people far smarter than I am with, medical backgrounds. So teams and players are well aware of what to be expected for reporting, isolating, travel, all of those aspects of the tournament.
Yeah, I know reporting was an interesting thing at World Masters.
Yes.
With some teams like refusing to play another team because the other team had COVID positive players that were like still wanting to play, and there's a whole debate there, but we won't get into that. Dan likes to say we're a political podcast, but today we're going to skip the whole discussion on that. So, Portwine, appreciate you coming in. A good discussion on the seedings and things, and of course we'll see you in Brampton. Any other final thoughts? We're going to sign off and then we'll hit the outro, but stay tuned for the subscriber only because Portwine's going to share a couple memories from CUC. So I'll let you do that in the bonus segment here, Portwine, but any other final thoughts you have to the general audience here?
I do. I was going to say tune in because Theo is going to be doing commentary from the VC showcase field from CUC. And I believe we have, I want to say about 11 games plus 3 finals, if I'm not mistaken, but give or take 3 or 4 games
Something
a day.
Like that.
Tune in. Lots of good play. Our first time back with a competitive tournament. So teams are going to be eager to get out and show what they can do. And who doesn't like listening to Theo?
Oh, well, I appreciate that, Portwine. Appreciate that a lot. So we'll see you in a bit. If you're subscriber only, you're going to hit that after the outro. So thanks for coming in, Portwine. Do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Carla DiFilippo, coach of the Toronto Sixers and co-founder of the Toronto Elites Junior Program. And you're listening to the Huckin A podcast, your coast-to-coast guide for all things Canadian Ultimate.
All right, that wraps up our main event. Thank you, Portwine, for coming on. Lots of good information. As I said, probably the most contentious topic being the Stella situation. Just like there's no quote-unquote fair way to do it because they didn't play due to COVID like we talked about, and where do you put them? So tough situation, but like I said, you got to play the games. So it is upsetting to not be seated higher when you do play the games. I get that for Incognito and the other teams in that women's division that played, but nothing you can do now. So as a coach would say, you just got to deal with the controllables. So what can you control? That's all you can do. So that wraps up our episode. Follow us on the social channels. We're posting graphics, videos, etc. A little bit slow on the posting because of Huckin and those things, but there's a universe point there. Sixers defeating Brute Squad. That's there. You can watch it. You've been sending us messages, I know, so we'll try to get back to you. Sometimes we are too late to get back, so keep sending them. Do appreciate hearing from the audience and meeting us in person as well. So if you're at CUC Senior, come say hi. I'll be in the booth, walking around as well. Come say hi. Do appreciate that. Follow us there. And then subscriber only, Portwine is going to talk about his favorite CUC memories, which is cool. So there's one in particular that's really fun. It's a fun game memory. It doesn't involve him, but involves a team from BC. So check that out if you're a subscriber. If not, subscribe. Help Altiroy continue to put out the content that we do. So we'll see you next week for the mega, I guess we'll call it mega, CUC Senior Preview. Also going to be doing picks. All divisions will be picking. So I'll reveal who I'm picking for the picks contest. So you can compete against me, and I'm sure Danny's going to do the contest as well, and other people that we know. So do the picks contest. Enter that. You can check it out on Instagram starting on Friday. So we'll see you next week. And have a safe one. Take care of yourself. And take care of yourself specifically because I want to make sure everyone's ready to go for CUC Senior. All right. Peace.